very good day, ladies and gentlemen. Your cruise director Ray for Sunday, the 26th of June. Yes, today is the day we will be transiting the Panama Canal. It's quite early. It's about 6:25 a.m. Iggy, our broadcast manager, and myself, we just got on the launch with the ship's agent. We're going to be heading ashore to follow you on the Insignia. Yes, all of you who are going to be transiting the canal today. 77 kilometers we're going to be covering with you alongside, getting as many shots as possible, giving you information along the way, and weather permitting, we're going to make it a great day for all of you. Once again, we're going to capture you transiting the canal from our perspective. You have a great perspective on this ship, but we're going to try to capture it for all of you from our perspective and share it with you. So have a great day, ladies and gentlemen, as you transit the Panama Canal. We'll be seeing you all along the way, and hopefully you have a wonderful transit. We'll see you in 77 kilometers at the end of the show. All right, after a successful launch ride over to Puerto Amador, that's over by actually a little outside of Panama City. Our boat took us to there. We then sped over to our first set of locks. We're at the Miraflores set of locks, ladies and gentlemen. It's actually a two-chamber series of locks. It's actually going to rise the ship up 16.5 meters. We're actually going to be taking the ship up 16.5 meters. We'll then go to the next set of locks, and it's going to take us up another 10 meters, and then we're going to go through the cut into Gatun Lake before we go to the Gatun locks, which will take us back down into the Caribbean and Atlantic Ocean. So it's kind of an interesting series. This is the first of a three-set series of locks. Again, we are right now at the Miraflores, just entering the Miraflores set of locks. It's a two-chamber series, and this will be taking us up 16.5 meters today. Just a little history about the Panama Canal and the beginnings of the Panama Canal. On January 1st, 1880, the French government broke ground for the first time, but after, well, let's just say a lot of loss of life with many mosquitoes and many other deaths that were caused, the U.S. government decided to intervene, actually to purchase the rights to the Panama Canal, and that took place on February 23rd, 1904. They purchased the Panama Canal and rights for the Panama Canal from the French for $50 million, which is equivalent to today's dollars, 2016 dollars, of $1.2 billion. So $50 million in 1904 is worth right around $1.2 billion. Also with the $50 million, $40 million of that went to the French government and $10 million went to the Panamanian government. Now, the Miraflores locks were completed in 1913. The actual Panama Canal opened up on August 15th, 1914. Now, after the U.S. took possession from the French, after spending the $50 million on the actual purchase of the canal, they invested another $400 million in completing the Panama Canal. Now, $400 million in modern-day times, or in 2016 dollars, is just around $14.3 billion. So it was a little bit of an investment back in the day, but I think it's paid off quite well. Here we are again, once again, at Miraflores locks. Now, Miraflores locks is the first set of locks. It's a two-chamber series of locks. It's going to take the ship up 16.5 meters until the Pedro Miguel locks, which is a one-chamber lock, which will take you up another 10 meters. And then you'll be going through the cut into Lake Gatun, or Gatun Lake as it's called, before you're lowered back into the other side of the ocean. Something else that's very interesting about the Panama Canal today, now I know you're going east. Technically, we are going from the Pacific to the Atlantic, but actually if you look at the path of the canal and the way it actually cuts through the country of Panama, today, as we're heading east, we're actually heading northwest. I know that's hard to believe, but if you look on the map, you will see that we actually go down. We then actually have to head northwest to transit into the next body of water. So to head east, we're actually heading northwest today as we make our way to the Caribbean and to the Atlantic Ocean. All right, the insignia is coming up on the second set of locks. The Miraflores locks, absolutely a successful transit, obviously. And now, as you can see behind me, the beautiful insignia is making her way to the Pedro Miguel locks. Now, the Pedro Miguel locks is a single lock chamber. It's going to bring the ship up 10 meters. It's one lock, 10 meters up. It will then take us to the lake level. Before you get into Gatun Lake, though, you're going to go in through the Culebra Cut, and prior to making your way through the Culebra Cut, you're actually going to be going under the Centennial Bridge, which was built, ironically, in the year 2000. There are only two bridges that span across the Panama Canal. Obviously, the Bridge of the Americas, the first bridge you went under prior to entering the Miraflores locks, and then after the Pedro Miguel locks, you're going to be going under the Centennial Bridge. Also, we're going to take some shots because this is really the first vantage point of the new set of locks that's behind me. You obviously have been in the Pedro Miguel locks earlier and the Miraflores locks earlier, but you'll notice behind me there's a second chamber, a second dredging was done, and a new set of locks. Now you have two sets of locks. Culebra Cut is still used for both sizes of ships. It was dredged, so all sizes of ships can go through the Culebra Cut and Gatun Lake, obviously, but when you get to the sets of locks, with the two new additional sets of locks on both sides, this is opening to traffic for the new bigger than Panamax ship. Our ship is actually considered a Panamax ship, and ships that are bigger than the Panamax ship can now utilize the new set of locks. Now, ironically, today, the 26th of June, 2016, also marks the opening of the first transit in the locks here in Panama. There's been some transits that have been testing out the lock system. The new locks are opening today, and actually the first transit with a new set of locks is going opposite direction. It's actually going from the Atlantic to the Pacific today. We might be passing it somewhere in Gatun Lake. I understand as we're filming this right now, the ship is transiting the Gatun locks, the new set of locks on the Gatun side. It's going to be coming up here after we transit, going through the new set of locks, which are behind me. So we're going to take some cutaway shots, show you the new set of locks, and also give you a nice view of the insignia as she makes her way through the Pedro Miguel locks. Now, building the canal came at a cost to many people here in Panama, as actually between 1880 and 1889, during the French occupation, when they were actually building the canal, they lost over 30,000 workers, 30,609 to be exact, from yellow fever and malaria that was running rampant at the time of the construction of the canal. So like all great things, there was a cost involved. Unfortunately, over 30,000 lives were lost. After passing under the Centennial Bridge, you're going to be entering a place called the Culebra Cut. Now, the Culebra Cut is an 8-mile section that will take you from Pedro Miguel locks to Gatun Lake before entering into the Gatun locks. Once again, it's an 8-mile stretch, about 150 meters across. They've done some extra dredging and widened it in places. This is due to the new locks that are going in for the supersized ships that will be using the new Panama Canal locks as of today, the 26th of June. Again, this is an 8-mile section. It runs right through the Continental Divide. There's actually a plaque that go ahead and says where the Continental Divide actually is. That's through the Culebra Cut. And also, this is considered one of the toughest areas to build of the Panama Canal. Most of the loss of life came in this particular area here in the Culebra Cut. Now, while all of you were in Gatun Lake after the last couple sets of locks in the Culebra Cut, we were actually driving around the jungle, stopped for a little lunch break, a little ceviche. Excellent, by the way. If you're ever in Panama, try the ceviche. And we're here at Gatun Locks just a little bit earlier than your scheduled time. I understand you're a little bit backed up today with your transit of the canal, but that's normal because the canal is like pretty much a highway of ships. And, you know, like all highways, sometimes you can have more traffic or less traffic, and your times can be basically warranted based on what happens on that particular route on the highway. And today, obviously, there was a little holdup for you coming into Gatun Locks, but that gave us some extra time here at the Gatun Locks station. And there's some very interesting things around here if you ever have a chance to get off the ship and see the Gatun Locks. This is one of the old mules. This is actually from 1914, one of the original mules. Back in 1914, I understand, they had 24 operating mules. This is one of the original 24. This was built in 1924 by a little company you may have heard of, General Electric. Yes, General Electric built the original mules back in 1914. And if you follow me down here, this is kind of interesting. The cost of the mules back in 1914, I understand they tell me, was about $20,000 per mule, $25,000. This is a modern day mule. You've seen them. They brought your ship through all the sets of locks, and they'll be bringing through the Gatun locks once you get here. And this is a modern day mule. Cost price, if you wanted to purchase one of these, is about $1.2 million. $1.2 million for a new model. Used ones are going for about $980,000. There's not really a market for used mules. I just made that up. I want to let you know, though, there's not 24 operating mules now in the canal. There are actually 140 operating mules in the canal. So just the cost of the mules alone At that price, think about it, it's a little pricey when you take your ship through. We're going to talk about different pricing of the canal for your ship today. We're going to try to find out what the final bill was. I'm going to give you some information about the most expensive transit in the Panama Canal ever to this state, right around $375,000. Which ship do you think it was? We'll let you know in a little bit, but see if you can figure out which ship was the most costly transit ever of the Panama Canal, which passenger ship. It came in at $375,000, one transit, one way. See if you can figure out what ship that was. We are in the last series of locks, the Gatun locks, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see behind me, the insignia is making your way from Gatun Lake, approaching the Gatun locks, where there'll be a 3-chamber series of locks that's actually going to drop the insignia 26 meters down to the Atlantic Ocean. Now, just to let all of you know, it's 52 million gallons of water is needed for every chamber of locks. Once again, it takes 52 million gallons of water. It takes about 15 minutes to fill that much water. It's all done with gravity, ladies and gentlemen. There are 3 chambers to get through all 3 sets of locks. You're looking at about a 45-minute transit time to get through the Gatun locks. And once again, each chamber will contain 52 million gallons of water, and that is natural water that's pumped in from the lake, ladies and gentlemen. It's run by gravity, but each chamber does hold 52 million gallons of water. The reason for the canal is pretty obvious, ladies and gentlemen, but how much time and money does it save by having a Panama Canal? Well, if you were to travel from New York to San Francisco and you didn't have the Panama Canal, it would add 7,910 extra miles to your trip. So you can imagine, with fuel, with labor and time, a little bit more expensive to go around South America, so definitely the canal is quite a good investment. Let's talk about doors for a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Each door, each locked door, weighs 750 tons. That's 1,500,000 pounds. There are 12 sets of locked doors, each being a pair. And these are about to open right now. I'm going to get out of the way so you can enjoy it. Once again, 1,500,000 pounds each. All right, here's a question for you. What is the least amount that anyone's ever paid to transit the Panama Canal? Well, in 1928, a gentleman by the name of Richard Halliburton swam through the Panama Canal, and they taxed him and charged him 36 cents. I'm pretty sure the people standing behind me, all of that, I'm pretty sure they paid a little more than 36 cents. But by the looks of some of them, maybe not. Maybe some of them did pay 36 cents. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as the Insignia heads to her last lock here at Gatun Locks, like I mentioned earlier, it is a 3-series set of locks here in Gatun. This is the third and final lock that she's heading into. We actually have to pack it up and get on a launch and head to the ship, because after it gets out of this last lock, it's in the open water and we have to catch it. Otherwise, I've got no place to go tonight, so I definitely got to get back to the ship. Little information I want to sum up for you, ladies and gentlemen. You did cover 77 kilometers today. We started at 6:30 in the morning. Right now it's just after 5. I expect you'll be out of the last lock about 5:30, 5:35, something like that. So definitely is a full day, an 11-hour transit of the Panama Canal today. You did cover, once again, about 77 kilometers or 51 miles through your transit day here in Panama. Also, I mentioned earlier, $375,000 was the fare for a ship. I asked you to guess what ship. It was actually $375,600, and that goes to the Norwegian Pearl. They hold the title as paying the most for any passenger ship ever going through the Panama Canal. They had to get across the canal a little bit earlier than scheduled. So they bumped up their position by 7 days, and with the additional fees, it came to $375,600. What did we pay today? Well, we talked to the Canal Authority. We just paid a bit. They won't give me the exact. Just a bit over $200,000 for our transit today here in the ditch. Once again, a little over $200,000. I can't get the exact amount, but they said you just went over $200,000 by a little, so we'll call it $200,000 even for our transit today here in the Panama Canal. Hey, we want to thank a few people. First and foremost, a gentleman who's been following me all day, capturing all these great images. Let's have a nice hand for Iggy. When you see him around the ship, give him a big pat on the back. He's going to be staying up late putting this together, doing the editing, so all of you can have a chance of seeing it. What's your name again, my friend? Shepard. How come I keep I'm forgetting your name? Shepard has been with us, the security here in Gatun. We've had security all along the way. And also our driver and canal representative, Lionel, who actually I've known Lionel for about 15 years. So it was kind of a reunion when he picked me up early this morning, and he's done a great job in getting us through all the authority and all the checkpoints and everything like that. The Canal Commission has been absolutely outstanding. Also, I do want to mention on this day, June 26, 2016, there was quite a celebration. We actually ran into Joe Biden's motorcade coming over here. We didn't actually run into it, but it did hold us up for a little bit. So we'd like to thank Joe Biden for saying hello as well. He couldn't get him on camera though. But today is a very big day in the history of Panama. Actually, the whole country is celebrating today. You see celebrations all over the cities. You hear it on the radio because today the new canal opened, the first transit of a ship through the new canal. 2 new chambers opened up, 2 new sets of locks on both sides, and they're absolutely fantastic. Pleased about what's going to be happening with that. Today marks the day that all started. Once again, June 26th is quite a historic day here in the Panama Canal for Panama, but it's also quite a historic day for all of you on Insignia. Sincerely, we hope you've enjoyed your day in the ditch. From all of us to all of you, we hope you had a great day, and we'll see you around the ship.